created my own little algorithms to do one thing or another, like disease states, a mortality algorithm. And
I think you will have a whole levels of robotics, that humanoid robots or non-humanoid robots, whatever the case is.
But the one that I really gravitated towards was Alteryx. Low code, no code, business intelligence stuff, data science, machine learning, things like that.
Audio, or text, and then there's big metaverse bug. Everybody knows the metaverse.
Another week of AI.
So what is the average?
Well, the thing is, there's the fact that you can buy from many industries, for many things, you can buy a tool already that does what you need it to do, right? So when I first came in the military, very young, I was 17 years old. And back then, the Officers Club and NCO Club was run by military people, like literally. It wasn't MW, it was military people. Well, as a logistician, just like you do count all the 10% of the equipment and you count all of the weapons, we used to have to go to the club to inventory the liquor. So the way we would inventory the liquor would be by bottle, by weight, and we would do the formula versus the sales, and then decide it's a certain percentage left or right that you can account for, that you can get away with not having. And then at a certain point, they'd be like, somebody's stealing. Well, time moves forward, and now you have you move forward, and you had software, and then software that bartender puts in specifically what the drink is that they're making, and then based upon that calculation, when you go ahead and measure the bottles, then you can get a tighter group. Well, nowadays, AI can look at what's coming in, what's going out, and basically a phone with LiDAR can go and just scan the bottles. You're just taking a picture and it's scanning the bottles. And because it got LiDAR, it knows what bottle, what it should be. And based upon where the liquid is, now we've moved from losing this much money and it's okay, this much money and say it's okay, to the point that we could tell pretty much within a few drinks how much we've lost. And then the AI can look at who was on shift based upon the camera and the shift logs, and tell you Tommy's stealing. Either he has a heavy hand or Tommy's taking the cash and not putting it in the till, and you don't know. So AI, those tools are integrated into the things we do now. As AI begins to evolve, we won't be calling it AI anymore. It'll just be ubiquitous and embedded in things, right? One point, the antivirus you had, there was a antivirus, there was a malware, there was and all of those things became one. Your cell phone is an amalgamation of a whole bunch of things. And then y'all got a digital camera at home. Have you bought a digital camera lately? Oh, it's in your phone, right? When's the last time you bought a new alarm clock? Oh, it's in your phone. Well, AI is going to be the same way. And so what you're looking for is not always just using open or closed source models, but looking for a tool that manages your business with the AI smarts that you need for your business built in. So look at the entirety of where we're at now and what tools and products have that functionality built in for you, because the average person maybe isn't trying to learn fully models, but they need to understand how models work and understand how knowledge management works and how analysis works, so they can look at the tools that they're buying and say, well, this worked for my business.
Yeah, the reason I named it KM and LLM is because LLM is not even that known. Like if you walk around the street and you say like, yeah, what do you know about LLM? You ask about ChatGPT, everybody knows about ChatGPT. Mm-hmm. They heard it on TV, they saw Microsoft Copilot or something along the line. What you see is a lot of AI tools, but what you don't see is the data processing, right? How do you process that AI to feed those AI tools? Down here is all data. This is data processing, and this is all the data use case. And data use cases is what I call AI is, right? This data has to be processed in a certain fashion, right? Certain style. So when Bobby just described that, like if you put that in your house, like as a solopreneur, you're working in your home, what you would like to do is maximize more time with your family and minimize time in your business. Well, you have to think about it as a strategy, right? You have to organize all your devices. You have to think through and say, how do I minimize this devices that's in front of me, and how long is it going to take me? How can I use all these devices as it is and make that part of my strategy? So that way, a large language model that can talk to anybody in the world is none of your tools necessary, right? What the tool that you need is the one that talks to all of your other devices, like what Bobby just described, that phone knows what alcohol content is, but that phone doesn't know what the sale was from yesterday. It's going somewhere else. It's looking at the POS system, says point of sale system, to say, hey, how much was the sales again? Or hold on, somebody's going to process that data and figure out the delta between alcohol and money missing, or money missing and alcohol is too much, right? Whatever the case is.
Yeah.
So the data is processed somewhere, and when it's processed, I think going back to Lucky's example, you need privacy. You want to process data, but if you process that data in Ohio and you live in California, your privacy is not really there because somebody else in Ohio has those data. They process it for you and then feeds it to you in California, right? And I'm not making this up. It's literally what's happening because your data centers are probably in Virginia and you're using it somewhere in Florida. And if it's somewhere in Texas, doesn't mean you are in Texas and data is being processed in Texas. No, it could be still processed in Virginia, depending on the device that you're interacting with. So,
It sounds to me like it goes back to you need to know what questions to ask.
strategy and the question is what brings the strategy together. Because if you look at it from your house perspective, for your kids' safety, for your safety at home, your Ring doorbell, that's not something you can control. But can you take the information from the Ring doorbell and have a large language model that you install yourself? And again, I want to go back to the time frame you mentioned. To install, we were actually going to do a live demo today. Me and Bobby talked about it, but a live demo might be just something that it's not about how fast you can do it. It's about how many troubleshootings are you going to have to do. That me and you can teach about large language model downloading all day long. It's not downloading. It's about using it and how many troubleshootings you fall into, right? How to overcome this troubleshooting really, really fast. So when it comes to downloading, it's really fast. But how many hours are you going to spend in troubleshooting is what you have to strategize for. The good question here is, I know how to download a large language model, but do I know how to troubleshoot it, right? Because troubleshooting is what we have been researching for the last 3 or 4 years at this point, because that's what wastes a lot of time in AI project. And Lucky mentioned this, 83% of the AI project don't really go anywhere, right? But it's okay. If you have a strategy and you ask the right question, you're not looking for an answer. You're just looking for a better question, right? Strategy is better questions. So let me go back to the house example about kid safety. You got your Ring cameras, you got your Apple devices, you got your Samsung devices, Androids, whatever the TV devices you have. They're all interacting somewhere in your house. They're all processing data through your wires that leaves your house, right? That's the pipeline, sort of like a water pipe. How does the water come in and how does the water leave, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you have the data that's all around your house, you're not going to tap into all of them, are you? Right? Like you're not going to do that. You're going to have to do it one by one, like step by step, and say, all right, look, if that Ring doorbell camera is something that's important, how do I secure some things that interacts with that Ring doorbell cameras? Because when we did that, we were just like, oh my God, this is just out in the open. Anybody can just tap into this part of your house and get everything from you, right? So large language model doesn't necessarily mean that, oh my, but because your safety, security, and privacy, I think, Lucky was alluding to earlier, it doesn't necessarily feel bad today. It just stacks up over time. And all of a sudden you realize you have no control over those data. Those data belongs to somebody else, and you have no control over where those data are and how you can frame those data so that way you can utilize those data, right? And with large language model, it's no different, right? A doctor's office that says, 15 years in business, I just stack data wherever. I can pull them together. Yeah, but with large language model, it can do it. But here's the problem with large language model. If you have them all in a paper, you haven't digitized it, what good is it going to do for you? right? You have all sorts of archived data. You have record management that's in your closet, the stacks of paper, right? So strategy, right? You don't have to go through a Ring doorbell camera or go through your closet. Start with a strategy, a map out of say like, if I develop a large language model, I should do easy steps first, see how that works, see how that feedback works. So that way I do some things and I go outside and go for a walk, right? Like you said, I want to spend time with myself, right? I don't want large language model to just kill me.
Yeah.
I already killed myself enough with the laptop in front of me all day long. Now I
Yeah.
have large language model. I don't even go to sleep anymore.
Well, and that goes to the whole point of anything in life. What are you doing it for, right?
Mhm.
So, with any tool, to include all of the AI tools that are now available, if you get information fast and accurately, what are you doing with it? Once I get this information, how do I turn that information into mine? These are the questions you really got to ask yourself. Yeah, this is wonderful information to which you do nothing with. Years ago, there was a series of books. First, there was Built to Last, which was a great book, talked about companies that have lasted X number of years. And then they would have these conferences. And one day, someone went to the conference and says, "Yeah," when the audience goes, "Yeah, but so what? I don't know how to do this." So then the same PhD team went back and built a book called Good to Great. And the thing about Good to Great is it talks about how businesses, great businesses, took advantage of the information at hand, right? How Kmart got beat because they had the reports, the big analysis to say what they need to do, but they didn't. How did Kroger become number one? Is because in the surveys that they give customers, it says, "I don't want to go to the baker and the butcher and the shopping mart. I want it all together." Everybody else in the industry had that information, but Kroger's the one who did something about it and started to build their Krogers as such. And that's how they had the advantage. So for any of us out there, the question is, when I get this information, what am I going to do that will then earn me revenue? If the answer is I don't know, then maybe you're wasting money. Just saying.
Yeah.
Well said.
Word.
Yeah, that's pretty much the 1, 2, 3 of where large language model you're going to get from, and then at 3, what are you going to do with it, right? Is it even worth it to go to the number 2 steps to figure out what are you going to do with it, right? Because if you think about it, majority of the stuff that I have on my desktop, it's probably not worth for me to search, right? So is there alternative? Yes. So one of the things that I do is I go to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT, like, write me a script for my computer specifically and tell me how to do it in my computer. Should I be downloading a large language model just to do what I just did with ChatGPT and it took me 2 minutes to do? Because when I did that ChatGPT gave me the code, I copied and pasted it in the computer just like ChatGPT told me to, and it ran it. It took like 8 hours. I went to sleep, woke up fresh, looked at the computer, and I was like, "There's a new file here." Guess what it had? All the things that I asked for it. It probably didn't capture all of them because 8,000 of them was in there, right? I'm sure I'm not going to be so sad that I missed a few 100,000 or whatever. I saw 8,000 that I couldn't have done myself, right? 8,000 pretty much in a gold mine, right? I found a lot of information that I was looking for. So it goes back, it shows that some things business did not want to do for decades and years because of how cost prohibitive it was, how technology didn't really exist. But now we all been wanting this for so long. Now it's here. And it's called large language model. Tomorrow it might not even be called large language model. It would just sound like Microsoft. It has everything in it, right? Somebody's going to label it and then say, I have everything, right? So you might hear large language model in other ways like NLP, which is natural language processing. And if you hear this other thing that nobody really uses anymore, NLU, which is natural language understanding. But if you look at NLP, that describes large language model very easily. If you can process that information in your head, you can do it in the computer. If you have a language in your head, you have a language in your computer, and that language is great in your computer because you can talk to it now. So instead of thinking about logic, like how to write code, if this, then, right, you're just saying, do whatever I ask you to do. If you don't understand it, tell me you didn't understand it, right? Or save me some time. Say, I don't even know what you said, but try it this way. Because I do that with ChatGPT sometimes. I don't ask ChatGPT questions. I said, like, what question should I ask you based on what I'm trying to do? It gives me a prompt. I copy and paste that into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT does its thing, right? So NLP, NLUs, large language model, this might not be a thing for you in the future. You're gonna say everything is AI, everything is a laptop, everything is a speaker, whatever it is. It's just mislabeled everywhere.
Yeah.
that's the case of marketing, right? Everybody mislabels everything for themselves. But one thing you're going to have for sure is that knowledge piece, the knowledge management piece, and this is where I want to probably get into at this point, is because this is the bread and butter that we all need to understand about knowledge management. It's your business continuity, it's your succession, and to go back to your questions earlier, how much time should I spend? This is my number two. If you have a 15-year-old business and you're going to be in 15 and you're going to be in the business for the next 15 years, you need succession. You need exit strategy. You need a business continuity, and they all rely on knowledge. And if you cannot package those knowledge correctly using a large language model that is, well, I guess there's many ways to terminize, but this is probably a family-friendly show. I have to probably say something along the line of you have to be the owner of this KM, right? You literally have to own it. You have to protect it like that lady in Star Trek. She's been protecting it. Bobby, what was her name? Kiki?
Oh,
No?
Michael Burnham. That's right, Captain Burnham.
Captain Burnham. Oh my goodness. She went through so much trouble in her life just to protect that knowledge. You got to protect that knowledge because you want to pass it on to the next guy who's going to buy your business or be your son or daughter that's going to, do the succession of your business. So large language model, it will disappear. But KM's been here for so long. We've struggled with it so much, but now it's transforming because of large language model. You can onboard somebody because of KM that's running on large language model. You onboard this person today. Next time you onboard somebody, you're going to onboard that person in a few seconds shorter than the first person, or a few hours shorter. Because when Bobby was talking about military, I was thinking about, like, my goodness, to onboard us, it took them 6 weeks to put us through a boot camp. They could have put us through hell for 6 weeks, and we would have had all the knowledge done in day one, right? They didn't have to put us through classrooms anymore. They could have just run us to the Bertha and then just kill us all, right? Physically, we would have been just all fine because, that's what you're supposed to do in the military, right? But we spent so much time in the classroom just learning about things that we should have been able to do on demand, just in time. I shouldn't have to learn all the ranks in the military. I should just look at it whenever I feel like it, right? Whenever I need it, I can ask for that information. So onboarding, that's primary example that I always use for businesses that can afford it. But if you're a small business and you're thinking to yourself like, oh, well, I don't do onboarding. I don't need onboarding training. And then like you mentioned, safety. Well, if you're a small business and you don't have to worry about OSHA coming and inspecting you, maybe you don't need it. But guess what every business requires? Somebody to look at the invoice. Somebody look at the invoice and say, I can audit this in real time without having human eyes on it. So when you talk about the account receivable, account payable, AR, AP, your auditing of your invoice, money that's going in, money that's coming in, can you have a system look at it? A large language model can do that, just the way Bobby mentioned it, through a phone, right? A phone can do all this tracking for you, but you have to have a strategy behind that large language model to do those things for you. And you have to make sure whatever that it's doing enough to say, well, it's either saving me money or it's making me
saving me time or saving me money.
Yeah, exactly. So it has to do something greater than this large language model, and that's if you frame it. I had a conversation with John actually earlier about this in the morning. I said if you just look at it from the knowledge management perspective, everything falls into line. 15 years ago, you had a bad start in your business. Today, you can start all over again. Use your SOP that you're going to sell 15 years from now. That large language model will help you develop a business intelligence no matter what size your business is today.
Yeah.
If you have good business intelligence, guess what's going to happen to your business? You are going to be you're going to be better evaluated than your competitors. Because a bank can walk in and say, how do I know you're evaluating yourself as 3 million? or show me that Excel sheet that has good large language model built into it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
So you
right.
can imagine all sorts of use cases that comes up, and I'll give it to Bobby now. Maybe he can jump in as well.
I mean, I not only do I agree with you, and it goes back to Masako's question about uh, knowing what's uniquely you, making something special, making something yours. So you have your core business, those things that you do in your business that keep the business running. You're buying, you're purchasing, your production, whether you're making lawnmowers or you're making bread, it's all production, right? Those things, artificial intelligence can definitely help you with to optimize them. Another place that could help you if you've had this business for 15 years and you say, I want to make this business uh, books in a state that if I were to sell it, I'd get top dollar. Well, to do that, you would have to either hire a CPA to redo your books and realign things, or have a tool, your accounting tool that uses the international accounting standards, where it does 3-point verification and et cetera, et cetera. These things that banks know that when they're looking at your general ledger, this number is what it says it is. The other piece to that isn't necessarily something you can do with artificial intelligence is what makes you unique and special. There's a lot of people out there selling lawnmowers, a lot of people out there selling bread. What about your bread is special? What's the experience when I come into the restaurant, right? So you can use artificial intelligence to help create surveys and analyze the surveys to see what customers like or don't like so much and make improvements. There again, building business value in your business. So a 15-year-old business can absolutely be made better by artificial intelligence by breaking down the things that you do and the things that aren't quantifiable, but yet makes your stuff unique and special. So you got the high tech stuff where it does the deep dive analysis, and the low tech stuff. Why don't they look like my other store on the other side of town? Well, it's painted pink, and pink is a color that people either like or they hate. So why not choose another color that's warm and inviting? Ask artificial intelligence, what are those colors? It'll tell you. Of those colors, what do they tend to communicate to people? You'll get those answers. So again, it's leveraging the right tool at the right time to enhance your overall business. I wouldn't go one shot and try to fix it all. Just like with anything else, it took you 15 years to build that business. Take your time and use the correct tool, building from the bottom up. Make sure your financials are good and build upon that. And I think artificial intelligence, knowledge management, all of those things come together to really enhance your bottom line.
Well said.
I guess we had a guest that we really had in mind, and we're gonna have to bring her back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The microphone comes back on. But she mentioned something that there's a dire need to duplicate information for staff. I think Bobby just described how you personalize it to your business. How do you personalize it to your employees? How do you personalize it so there's a good retention? How do you onboard somebody who doesn't even speak the language of your community? Can you have large language model that helps you with that? It's not your large language model, maybe. We don't have to build one from the scratch, but you can use large language model because I think I kind of want to talk about the large language model and how it works, right? Because I think talked a lot about why of large language model, how of large language model, but what is large language model, right? Just to give you a reference, Google 10 years ago, so when they rolled out, well, they had this Google Translator for a long time, but these things over time grows with the practice, with human validations, right? So let's say, for example, Google Translator specifically, when it first came out, what it used to do is it will say, you're a German person who's trying to learn or understand Mandarin, Chinese Mandarin. So Google will have to go through a process of take that German language, turn it into English, turn English into Mandarin, and then go back and tell the German guy what he needs to know based on German to Mandarin, Mandarin to German, right? Dutch language. Or what's the German language? Not Dutch, right? German is, let's just stick to German. Sorry about that.
Is it Deutsch? So it's German.
They don't call it German language, of course. There's Mandarin or something like that, right? Like a Deutsch language. So anyways, but over time, because of its proficiencies, because we were able to edit it further, it went from German to Mandarin straight. You didn't have to go through English, right? But guess what happened? The latency came running, right? It was like, what? Now it's almost like zero latency. It works in real time. So 10 years ago, when we said 10 years ago, they were using large language model in a different form. So it wasn't based on these GPT things that we call it. It was based on just sequencing, right? And there's a reason why I'm going down this rabbit hole, is because I want you to understand something that happens in your brain, right? Your brain does the same thing. It's just that when AI does it, you think, oh my God, it's totally out of control. No, it's not. It's just like your brain. Your brain uses sequencing in order to understand pattern. And when it can understand pattern over and over, it does this thing called most confidence and highly accurate. It's full of errors, and errors are part of the future. There's no getting away from errors in AI. Errors is literally what AI is. It's just that you see a most confident and highly accurate version of AI for the large language model. So again, going back to that transformer situation or the translation situation, these languages that are being translated in 2025 is far superior than it was 10 years ago. So when you think about like, oh, I'm a small business, I have 3 employees, I don't really need that. You don't need it today, but you need to have it matured by the time you need it. And this is something that kind of raises those questions in your head, like, wait a second, what am I missing here? What else do I need to know? Well, here comes the part about your brain. All right. Your brain lives off of this thing called space and time. Okay. And this is important for large language model, because this is how you know what large language model is not good at, right? Because what you're good at is what large language model is not good at. Your human brain is formed based on this concept of space and time. So as a brain that has 86 billion neurons starts off with like 2 million neurons. So as a child, you're raising about 25 millions a day in neurons, connections of neurons, and your capability of growing over time slows down. But you, as a child, you start with 22 million, and then it goes like 25 million a day. So what's happening is that you're realizing this concept of space, right? Concept of space, because you can put your feet down or touch things, feel the space. And if you see the space, all of a sudden you realize, like, okay, there's a time concept as well. Because last time I put my finger in my mouth, now I know it's been a few seconds because things have dried down. I'm catching up to a time, right? That's what a child does. So space and time, developing that time means you're developing sequences. And if you can develop sequences, you start finding patterns, right? So there you go. There's your sequence and patterns right there. And why is it important? Well, it's important in a fashion that if you think about large language model, where large language model is not good at is in space and time. It doesn't, in its ontology of way of its being, the large language model's being, it doesn't have a space-time concept. What it has is a lot of sequences, a lot of pattern, because that's how it started. It started with sequences. So what we taught it, the humans, we taught it that there's a sequence of words. If you put those words together, they don't make sense. Yeah. But if you keep putting those words together a bunch of times, and I think somebody mentioned earlier about billions versus trillion, a human brain will process about 1 billion words in its lifetime. Well, since the inception of AI just a few years ago, it's processed about 1 trillion words. So billion, trillions, you can do the math. Already at this point, it has calculated 1 trillion words in shuffled manner, right? So it took the sequences of saying, well, if I put those words together, they don't make any sense. But if I put those words together like this, humans seems to be okay with it. Let's go with that next time as well. Do you see where I'm going with this? It's a lot of sequences that's looking for patterns of what will be the most correct answer for everybody, and what's the most likely answer that Masako might like, right? Space and time, it doesn't do good, but it does really well with sequence and patterns. And that's what human brain does. It starts with space and time, develops sequence and patterns, but large language model is flipping it on the other side. It's developing patterns, sequences, and then learning about time and space, which is okay because it's a slow process. It will learn that eventually. And when it does, we will have a hell of a show, I would say, on what's going to happen to our interactions with AI, right? Because its understanding of space and time means something that we cannot even fathom what an AI would be capable of doing at that time, right? We can talk about humanoid robots and how LLM develops this humanoid robots and does amazing things for humanoid robots that we probably weren't able to develop 12 months ago, but today we can develop it every day because of large language models. And then that goes back to Lucky's digital twin as well. Those capabilities are insanely fast. So I started off with 2016, where Google Translator was space and time, and then sequences and patterns. What holds for the next 10 years is how do we minimize these data? How do we compress them? How do we process this data in a compressed manner so that way we can launch it anywhere? Launch it in each IoT devices. Launch it into right now. Me and Bobby talked about it before the show. We have to download it, right? And then we have to show it here how we are downloading it and how fast it was to download, right? That size is going to shrink. That size is shrinking rapidly. As of 2 months ago, if you remember the Wall Street crash that happened where they lost 500 billion back in January, 600 billion over an afternoon, it was because of large language model that was too small. Everybody said, "Oh my God, there goes the earth and sky. Everything's falling apart," right? Well, nothing fell apart. It's just that we realized, like, well, there's other ways to do things, right?
Right.
And we can do it faster and we can do it for cheaper. So 100 million versus $5 million, huge difference. What does the 5 million have to do? Well, that 5 million feeds into a small business or growing business or medium-sized businesses to adopt artificial intelligence, adopt it for a very cheap cost, right? Lucky talked about open source and closed source. But again, it learns exponentially, not incrementally. So if you're thinking like, well, I will get started when it matures. Well, it matured for somebody else. That's not your baby. That's a mature baby that somebody else raised, right? If you don't have one, that means you don't have a baby. You have to be happy with somebody else's baby, right? So closed and open source, there's a huge conversation to have. But if you split apart all these large language model and all these topics away, what we're discussing here is that how does this knowledge base stack up, right? What's in that knowledge base? What's in the core of this knowledge base? If it doesn't have, say, for example, a space and time concept yet, that's okay. Will it learn it? Yes, it will learn it. But will it learn for your business is a whole different question than will it learn for Google, right? Because Google can hand it over to you. And I call it the 80-20 rules. Google can give you 80% of everything you need, but you have 20% that is your responsibility to sort of say, now that Google has given me their baby, I'm going to have to make this baby my baby. Right? I have to make
sounds to me like you're saying, or this is what each individual business owner should be doing. It's relationship building with your model. Spend time in it daily, because if you don't spend time in your relationship model building,
very accurate.
Then it's not yours.
Right. Well, that's the same thing in the circle. You talk about motherhood so much, and I think about you often when it comes to artificial intelligence, because you're growing a intelligence, be it artificial or not, right? So many things at different ages we take in. So by the time you're an adult, when you make a decision, there's so many things that you just take for granted because you were shown, your mother showed you as you were coming up, right? You don't even think about it. It just is. It's part of who you are. But the truth of the matter is, we move through time and space pretty much on a guess, meaning you take a step, you've taken in information, you've seen the environment around you, but you're not looking at your feet. you know where what your stride is and how often that stride has worked for you. I can send you down the sidewalk and raise one square extra inch and a half, and now you're on the ground because you tripped over a loop because there was some information that you missed, right? So just know that just as we're always learning, the AI itself is always learning. It's only as good as the information that it has at that moment. When we take a step, there aren't sensors in our feet saying how close we are to the sidewalk, right? So just think of that as you develop your own solutions, that you will always be part of validating, is it what you wanted it to be? No matter what the solution is, don't just take it for granted. Question it. And not only question it, you can make the artificial intelligence engine that you choose question itself. Go back and validate yourself. Challenge. Give me 10 questions that will challenge this result. And they'll give you 10 questions. Then you say, okay, based upon the last 10 questions, ask yourself those 10 questions and give me a answer.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, Bobby. Even when it comes to other founders, when they want to know, the data from our organization. And I'm like, instead of me giving you the data from our organization, let me show you how to get your own. Because when you start working in it yourself, then you could develop your own storyline. So when you go back to ask those questions, you've now built it and it can respond uniquely to you and your organization. So I always tell them, I was like, you don't want my data. Let me teach you how to find your own data and develop your own data so it's unique
Right.
to you and your mission.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true. How to develop your own. So that kind of addresses the key point of all of this is for those people who are entrepreneurs or those people who are working in business, how do you make the data your own?
Lucky.
Yep. I agree with you guys, completely. And I just I was reminiscing. Do you guys remember the first AI that seemed like it was one amazing, right? And they just blew you out of your socks. And I remember the first one you remember, was it IBM Watson?
Yep.
Mhm.
Watson X now. Yeah.
And Watson came with it like in 2000 or early 2000s or something like that.
2014-ish. Well, a
Was
little
it?
before 2014. Yeah.
I remember it being so much sooner because I remember just the fact that I like to play chess, and would you say checkers, chess, what have you, and it just amazed me that okay that there was something that an AI, and we didn't call it AI, it was just Watson, you know, was defeating the best chess players in the world, and it's just like okay, now the computers are definitely smarter than us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just remember, but it was trained on very specific area. It was trained to play chess. That was its vector sequence. It knew that it had only so many, squares on a table, and it had so many moves, but it was trained on that data specifically, and that was his specialty. You couldn't at the end. There was only so many more moves that you could make, and then the human mind only, could not keep up with that. So at the end, it was one of those special moments where in life you're like you start to realize, okay, there is something in this that we can now take advantage of or use that'll make smarter decisions than us. Even the smartest people in chess couldn't defeat us. So we know at some point we could train this to do other things better than us. And that was one of the beginnings for me, at least. There was statistical models, BI that turned into ML, but the first one that I remember was Watson, and that was a very specific model.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It was a very specific model. But and that's when they demonstrated something because now you had more capacity and simpler things. When I was 16 in high school, I worked for a company in the real computer room. And back then, the jobs I had was stuff like when they would run checks, or handwritten things, we had a machine that would read them, scan them through, and then it would do maybe 30 or 40, and then it'll stop. And whatever it couldn't figure out, it'll put it on the screen, and I'd be like, that is A, right? And, and then it'll do like 100, and it'll stop again. So,
Nice.
yeah. And it was easy money until they bought a module that then would then see what I was typing and then remap it so that eventually it would run hundreds and hundreds before I had to say that is a W, right? So over time, as these things evolve, and they will continue to evolve, I think that we'll be less amazed, and we need to really pay attention for good and bad. Good, what's good for our company, and bad as far as how are companies using this against us, or in ways that we may not be comfortable with, or with your kids' toys. Are they tracking how your kids play with the toys? And, just things that maybe are not truly evil in nature, but I bought a toy from you for my kid. I didn't buy this toy to give you data on my kid. You know what I mean? So it's just always educating yourself.
You were actually the first human in the loop.
Yeah, I really was. This finger right here, this is the one that did it.
This is the magic finger.
I mean, what we're describing here is perfect segue into what needs to happen next, right? We not only don't have to become aware, we have to get involved. And I'm going to exactly use the terminology that we just used right now, HITL, human in the loop. How is that important? Your Chat GPT experience 2 years ago was so bad. How bad was it? It was so amazing up until you realized the next one is even better. And the reason it got next time better and better and better, today, I can create a single image that has perfect spelling, all 5 fingers, eyes that matches, and looks real, right? How did that happen? It happened through this process of what Bobby just described. It's just that they did it with hundreds of thousands of people. The human Turks behind artificial intelligence, right? Human in the loop. And the terminology here that they use to improve that training is RLHF, reinforcement learning with human feedback. Guess what happens when you are not aware that feedback is so important for AI to learn? Something that is customized and needed for your business, right? So human in the loop, oh yeah, we can talk about it from ethics and moral background and blah, 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 because a lot of people do. They bring it up, right? They talk about it from that perspective, but it's not just for that. It's literally to build your AI's need to understand. And this is where a lot of people will understand actual AI, is because the reason AI has existed for so long is because of this thing called weights and bias. Or in another word, dials and knobs. You take this dial, you tone it down, you take this dial and bring it up a little bit more, all of a sudden the output starts making all sorts of different responses. You take this dial and you put this knobs, all of a sudden output just says, all right, I get it. You want me to do it again? All right, dials and knobs, do it again. And then system comes back with right answer. So this human in the loop is not just about, somebody to keep in check on it, but it's just that important. So I will use another example of Tesla. Like, that has nothing to do with large language model, but when the car is driving, and my favorite picture that I always use is a Tesla was driving behind a bunch of red lights and green lights and yellow lights, the traffic lights, right? The reason it was driving behind it is because the truck in front of it had a bunch of these traffic lights on the back of the truck. So the Tesla car is looking at it like, what am I supposed to do now?
Right. Exactly.
There's no lights in it, but I can see it, but I don't understand what that is. Well, Tesla actually has a human feedback that goes into system says, hey, there's a truck in front of me with a bunch of red lights and green lights and yellow lights. What am I supposed to do? Somebody has to say, like Bobby, don't worry about it. It's a truck that's moving in front of you, right? The system has to learn all these different things because, like, say, for example, bike on the side of the highway is a bike on the side of the highway. Bike on a wreck driving 80 miles an hour is not a bike that's driving 80 miles an hour. It's a bike on a wreck on the back of a car, right? Systems had to understand that. So remember, the space and time concept it visualizes, it sees things, which is computer vision. And the reason I bring that up is because these computer vision using large language model are far more sophisticated than they were before. And this is something very important for any business owner to understand, that, they say, I'm not going to use large language model. You're not going to use large language model until the day you realize all the other AIs that you're using are pretty much useless without large language model.
All right.
So say, for example, what Lucky just mentioned earlier and Bobby just mentioned earlier, that these systems are looking at patterns, but they couldn't describe the patterns. What's the problem here? They don't have a large language model to describe why they picked that pattern. The Tesla cars are really good at objectifying, looking at objects, the 3D object, and saying that object is this. Is this as in I make a decision, but I don't tell you what it is. I don't have a large language model to tell you what that decision is. So a business person who's looking at large language model from ChatGPT perspective now has a broader view of what it is that large language model do to all the other AIs that's been here already, and the AIs that are coming into the future, like humanoid robots, factory robots, digital twins, so many other things. Large language model exponentially grows the capabilities for all these things that previously, like Bobby said, if you press W over and over, that slows down the process, right? USPS has been looking at the postcards or the envelopes and reading addresses, handwriting, since 1990. Well, that's great, but there's no large language model to actually read out what's been said. It's just looking at alphabet and alphabet and alphabet and saying that's what the alphabet says. But it doesn't have a large language model to understand it from a business perspective, right? Mm-hmm. So today, USPS using large language model is a lot more better than back in 1990s when it was using AI called OCRs, right? Or somewhat of AI component called OCRs. So these pattern recognition capabilities and large language model built in is deadly combination, because what it's doing is that now it's able to describe things, right? So if you ever come to a lengthier discussions about AI, one of the things that you will hear me say over and over is the fact that it's identifying, labeling, and making decisions. If you can identify, you probably can make labeling. And if you label, you make decisions. If you don't label, you just identified and you stopped. There's no going into decisions anymore, right? So a system, no matter how old it is, it always has done just this. And it will do it for as long as the system exists. It will always have this human thing called what we do: identify, label, and make decisions. Mm-hmm. Right? So if you're a business owner and you're thinking like, wait a second, we're just talking about large language model in KM, and this guy's talking about pattern recognition. Well, it's important because you already have lots of pattern recognitions around you. It becomes part of your strategy to look at those pattern recognitions and say, what part of this pattern recognition can I put a large language model into and actually, like Bobby said, make some money off of it, right? It's worth to add to my revenue. If you can identify it and if you can label it, you can make a decision on it. Human intelligence, AI, if you can identify it and if you can label it, you can make decisions on it. Human brain does this thing called, which is evolutionary, we've been doing it for millions of years, is that we've identified, we labeled, and we made decisions for so long. We created a memory base, which is the DNA, right? That's where all the memory goes to live. Because you make so many decisions, you become very good at predicting. Your predictability score goes up higher and higher. It's like Bobby said earlier, you put your foot in front of your left, in front of your right, left and right, left and right. That's how you walk. You don't do frog jumps. You don't do left and right both at the same time. You figured out that left and right is the way to go. Decisions that you made has the consequences of you're predicting the next decision you're going to make. If you keep making the same decisions over and over, your productivity is going to say, just keep making that next decision. It doesn't matter. Because what happened is that you continuously identified, but you never corrected your labeling mechanism. Identify, label, and make decisions. So human intelligence, AI system, large language model pattern recognitions, they're all based on just this. If you can feed it the right data to identify the right data, and if you can label it because you've trained it, you've matured it, it now can make those decisions for you, but not on day one. It has to make those decisions for a continuous amount of time until it becomes really good at predicting what's coming next. And that's the latency part of it. It becomes super fast after a while, right? That's what Human Brain does. I've been walking faster after I learned how to walk because I've been labeling it as a walking, not crawling. Windows and doors. I walk through the doors, not through the windows, right? You see, labeling matters, right? So what excites me about large language model is this piece right here that we're discussing right now. It's the dials and knobs. It's that weight and bias. If you can dissect this information, now you open up a whole possibility of, am I a startup? Am I going to create a new product? Maybe. Am I going to improve my OpEx? Maybe. Am I going to do some CapEx? Maybe. If I have a 15-year-old business, maybe I should sell it tomorrow and start a new business. Because now my business intelligence went to the roof, my evaluation is good, and I can do exit strategy overnight. Because exit strategy is one of the oldest thing that used to take years and years, right? Am I going to sell my business? I'm not going to sell my business. No, I'm not going to sell my business. Maybe I shouldn't. Well, ask an AI. It will tell you, move to the next zip code, you can make more money, right? Open the store in the pink. They will love it because you open it up in the green and nobody cares to come in, right? So I say all of that because I talk with businesses all day long, but I have to humanize it, right? And once you start humanizing who you are and what your customers are and what are they looking for and how are they getting those information, what is their mechanism of labeling, you start thinking differently, right? And large language model enables you to do that, right? Now put that large language model into your business, it will start labeling things on your behalf. It will start making those decisions on your behalf. And if you let it mature for long enough, it will make those decisions so frequently that you can predict off of it, right? So it's a great conversation because we kind of went from why, how, now that we're talking about what. This what part is so like 15 minutes, no more. Why and how is immense. Like it can go on forever. Like I said, it's a rabbit hole that me and Lucky and Bobby, we always do in episodes, but this what part is very simple. It's not going to change much. It's always going to have data. Those data will need some identifying, and those data, through processing, has to be labeled correctly, tried and true, right? And then has to make a good decision, right? Which is that use case of. So if your Tesla cars is making bad decisions, trust me, you're not going to drive it again. If your autopilot in the aircraft was not landing correctly, trust me, you're not going to use it again. You're going to take over that decision. You're not going to outsource it anymore. So I guess my takeaway here, for after talking to so many business people about this information, is that what you have to do next is a matter of sitting down and not getting on a large language model and tell all of your employees to start using large language model, right? What you have to do is literally sit down with yourself and understand you don't have to do things like you've done 15 years for the last 15 years. You can do things differently now. Mm-hmm. But the best part of it is that you can afford it because almost all of this stuff is for free, right? And if you can afford it, and if you can identify what's cheap and affordable, you can label it correctly for the usage in your business. And now you can see, okay, I made that. So if you guys will grab me a few seconds, I want to talk about this real quick. Archive data. If you have archive data and you say like, well, I have a bunch of archive data on the back of my desktop. If you can make a system, which we do with agentic AIs, let that system make the same decisions you made 10 years ago, 5 days ago, 5 years ago, 5 months ago, and see how it made those decisions. If it made a bad decisions, you know it's not matured enough. But by the time it gets so good that it made a better decision than you, I think you know where I'm going with this, right?
Then you have a winner.
It's ready to go to production. Instead of you being the CEO, let the system be your CEO. You just work for the CEO.
That's the whole point of utilizing it, right? You can't work for it and on it. That takes too much.
Work for it and own it. Well put. So that's my
Logic.
wife here, but yeah, let's wrap this up, I guess.
That's why you need a twin, right? Twin. Where have you been?
See, this isn't lucky. This is actually the twin. This is the only way you can tell is the other one doesn't have this. So, yeah. But yeah, I'd like to be able to see if we can, get Vaughn back, and really, promote what she does. At the end, we're here. We build a platform for AI, but it's a platform for veterans to be able to build and learn. And so I'd like to have her back, and we can do this again. Yeah. But on that note, ay.
I'm awake.
I know. Wake up.
Well, you know what? The I is now like I.
I knew that. So, Bobby, any departing thoughts?
No, it's just been a wonderful experience as always. I'm looking forward to having our special guest return. I am just really excited about that. And thank you all, as always, for always contributing so much to my little tiny brain. Thanks.
Masako?
Be great on purpose.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well said.
and this is one more personal note. Tough times right now in the world, and a lot of times you find yourself, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? And then you got to change your state of mind. Is how can I make this? How do I change this? How do I make this work for me? How do I? And so sometimes it just takes a different perspective. Instead of making it work against you, make it work for you at the end. And so be positive, guys out there. Everyone's struggling, but make things work for you. Be aggressive. Change your state of mind. Own who you are and do your best, guys. And at the end, if anything, if all you have is your two hands, you also have family and friends, and then at the end there'll be the wind in your sails to kind of help you get through things. So thank you all again for being my friends and family.
Thank you. Thank you. Until next time, everybody take care of yourself. It's out.
Yeah.
Ay.